Let us put ourselves in the presence of God, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together today as we continue our preparations for the Environmental Planner Licensure exam. Lord, we admit that the road is not easy, but we know we are never alone. Grant us the strength to persevere, the discipline to stay consistent, the humility to keep learning. Sustain our minds and bodies, and uplift our spirits when we feel discouraged. Help us to trust in your perfect timing and to rest in your promises. We entrust everything to you, Lord, our efforts, our anxieties, and our dreams. This we ask in your holy name. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Monica. So let me share, because we need to go back to history and theory. So I'll share, I'll share, I will share the table of specifications. Let me share that. Okay. Tingnan natin yung itsura niya, no? So this is how, yeah, I hope you can see it, ano? You can see it clearly. Okay. So this is 20%. Right. Adjusting the table. So 20% history, concepts, theories, and principles of environmental planning. So again, we have different levels of the Bloom's taxonomy: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So the examinees can perform the following competencies under each topic. So we have environment, okay, environment, and then planning and environmental planning. So 30%, number of items, 30 items. So we need to do under A, we have definition of planning and environmental planning, environment. So the nature, elements, and processes of the environment and human ecology. So, and then recall the process of natural ecology, etc. So we should not forget the definition of terms. So we will do a drill of the, so I'm going back to the first, ano, kasi as in sa review natin, we always start with history and theory. Although in your examination, you start with this, with the processes, di ba? Ito yung day 1. So that's until 2 p.m., di ba? So the second day will be history, and then yung administration, yung legal aspects, etc. But but during the review at saka yung mindset ba, we need to start with really for his history. So I have a rundown of different viewpoints of planning. So I'll unshare this one. Unshare. Stop. Then I'll share another one. So start. Okay. So I'll start with key concepts of environmental planning. There are 4 methods in okay, human activities in a community. So these are the questions, and these are the tools that will aid in providing solution to our questions. So who are they? Okay, these are very basic, but of course, because we will be watchful and we will be paying attention to the different definitions of planning to set the tone. So parang binabalikan na natin yung the very first lecture. So who are they? Right? So because we are here to analyze human activities in a community, and this is through demographic analysis. So we respond to the question, who are they? And we need to understand the population. The population is always the starting point. Demographic analysis involves studying the characteristics of people living in a community, such as age, gender, education, household size, income levels, and migration trends. This data gives us insight into current needs and helps forecast future housing, schools, healthcare, employment, and other services. So we have the PSA that regularly updates demographic data sets, which planners should be familiar with. Then the question, what do they do? So this is the tool that will be used here normally is economic analysis. So economic analysis examines the livelihood, industries, employment sectors, income sources, and patterns of economic activity. This tool helps identify what drives the local economy, what opportunities exist, and what constraints need to be addressed. Understanding the economic base is critical for land use planning, investment programming, and resource allocation. So for the environmental planning licensure examination that will be taking place very soon, we have to know the difference between primary, secondary, and tertiary economic activities and how these influence land and infrastructure needs and many more. Now, where do these activities occur? So we need to understand the whole range of land use analysis. Land use analysis maps out where various activities take place: residential, commercial, agricultural, industrial, institutional, and recreational zones, and many more subzones. So it's a spatial tool that reveals how land is allocated and utilized, as well as patterns of growth or decline. This analysis helps planners ensure compatibility of uses, avoid conflicts, and promote efficient, sustainable land management. So land use analysis must be aligned with existing laws, such as the local government code, the SUD guidelines, CLUP standards, and many more. Now, the fourth question is, of course, not limited to, okay? How are human activities connected spatially through transportation analysis? And that's why we cannot separate these two. They are inseparable. And of course, all the tools there. But how are human activities connected spatially through transportation analysis? Transportation analysis focuses on the networks, roads, bridges, transit lines, walkways, bike paths, and many more that connect people and places. It shows how people move between home, work, school, and other destinations, and identifies gaps or bottlenecks in the system. Effective transportation analysis helps planners design integrated, accessible, and sustainable mobility solutions. This is especially in the context of the Philippine Development Plan and many other national plans, national transport policy, for example, which now emphasize the multimodal, inclusive, resilient transport systems, and many other strategies. So we can go to the next one. So this still comprise environmental planning. So we need to have a, how do you call that? Like not just a rundown, but there was a word I used earlier. So, and there are many and numerous or unending definition of the definition of planning. So planning is the process of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, okay, and many more. But we will concentrate on the 3 bullets here. So it's a deliberate and systematic process. So please note the terminologies that you see on screen and how I define it, how I further the discussion about the terminologies because it's important. Remember, there was this book by the late Honorable Dolores Endriga that all about definitions of planning. It's in your Google Drive. Okay, so when she was a member of the board, ito lahat yung mga lumabas sa board exam, and so that's why you're saying we are trying to go back again. For sure, they're still in the database, and for sure, some of the questions there will still be asked. Or all right, so di pa nila tinatanggal yon. So planning is a deliberate and systematic process aimed at guiding decisions and actions for a desired future. So in the slide, understanding the types of decisions that need to be made. So that's the first one. Before any before any action, it's essential to clarify what decisions are necessary. This could range from selecting project sites to determining land uses, to setting policy directions, or allocating resources. So clarity at this stage prevents wasted effort and ensures that everyone involved is focused on the same objectives. Second, assessing opportunities and limitations of the future. Planning, I remember it's like a question on true or false. Planning is wishful thinking, pag true or false. So that's why kahit ano pwedeng itanong during your board exam. So it's also about wishful thinking. It requires a realistic look at what's possible and what constraints exist, whether they're physical, like land availability, financial, the budget, legal, the regulations, or environmental, like hazards, climate impacts, etc. So identifying opportunities allows us to maximize positive outcomes while recognizing limitations helps avoid costly mistakes or unsustainable decisions. Then third, identifying the short and long choices designed to take advantage of these opportunities or respond to these limitations. So, we really need to even every option or course of action has trade-offs. This includes social, economic, and environmental consequences. So the ultimate goal is to design choices that take advantage of opportunities while minimizing risk or addressing limitations. So again, what's planning? So we continue relating alternative decisions to the goals and objectives established for an urban area, agency, or firm from here. Okay, so planning doesn't happen in a vacuum. It must always be anchored on clearly defined goals and objectives, whether you're working on a city's CLUP, an agency's sectoral program, or a private firm's development proposal. Every alternative you consider should be measured against these targets. This ensures that all actions, whether zoning decisions, infrastructure investments, or environmental interventions, are purposeful and aligned with the vision and mission set for the area or organization. So this step helps maintain focus and ensure accountability in planning outcomes. And of course, there's a lot more of actions here. Expressing information to decision makers in a readily understandable and useful form. No matter how rigorous the analysis, planning only becomes effective when the findings and recommendations are communicated clearly to those who need to make decisions, whether they're public officials, community leaders, or private developers. So this means translating complex data, technical jargon, and alternative scenarios into formats that are straightforward, that's visual and actionable. So we often use maps. We use charts, infographics, and concise reports to bridge the gap between technical analysis and practical decision making. So what's the primary purpose of planning? It's not simply to produce a plan, a document, or I would understand if some of you here or most of you who tweets, or you just look at the plans or the planning process as something mandatory, especially when you're with government and you're beating deadline, etc. And so your context is, or your mindset is, oh, because it's mandatory. But it's not just that the primary purpose of planning. And so we generate information and all this step-by-step activities, but it should help decision makers understand the potential consequences of their choices. So we need to be contributory to informing. We need to inform um, the decisions that will be made by our legislators, our executives, so the local chief executive. So what does this mean in practice? Isn't it that the primary purpose of planning is to generate information useful to decision makers and consequences of alternative actions, the consequences aspect. We analyze data, we assess scenarios, we present clear, actionable information about different alternatives, whether those alternatives are related to land or are they related to infrastructure, resource management, or community development. So we are there to provide analysis to what we gather, to the information that we gather. Then another one is the core value added by planning. The work that we do is the ability to clarify the likely outcomes of different options. For example, what happens if a city rezones an area for commercial use instead of keeping it residential? So what are the short and long-term effects of building system versus relying on natural drainage? Things like that. So the information produced should be useful. That is, it must be relevant, it must be evidence-based, and accessible to those who need to make decisions. It should support sound judgment. It should reduce uncertainty and help stakeholders weigh the trade-offs of various actions. So, in summary, we don't really make, or we don't guess the future. We plan, we analyze, but we provide, the planners provide a solid basis for making informed, responsible choices. Okay, that our legislators and our decision maker should make. So, another one is, oh, kanina, it's like a generic. So this one, professional. So we have this inclusion of this word. So planning is a sequence, okay? Sequence of deliberate, please pay attention to the terminologies, deliberate, purposeful actions to solve problems systematically by foreseeing and guiding change through rational decisions, reconciling public and private aims, and arbitrating between competing social, economic, political, and physical forces, and a combination of these forces. So, why deliberate purposeful actions? Why it should be intentional? Because every step should be thought of, pinag-iisipan, and we should not leave it to chances. So each action is aimed at achieving a specific purpose, which distinguishes professional planning from otherwise. People do the guessing work, or when people improvise, and so that makes us a different breed of technical people, because we are planners. We do it through we do professional planning. So we solve problems. How should we do that one? Why systematically? Whether because we problems, whether urban congestion, flooding, or housing shortages, they're addressed methodically. This means following a clear process, from gathering data to analyzing trends to generating solutions and selecting the best course of action based on evidence and standards. Professional planners don't just react to problems as they arise, they work through them with a clear strategy. That's why we solve problems. We should solve problems systematically. Now, foreseeing and guiding change through rational decisions. Foreseeing, right? So change is inevitable in any community or organization. So the planner's job is to anticipate shifts, demographic change or demographic shift, economic, technological, or environmental, and prepare for them. This is done through logical analysis and evidence-based decision making, ensuring that actions are justified and outcomes are predictable. We also need to reconcile. We also need to reconcile public and private aims. So in practice, planning involves balancing the interests of the community, which we normally term the public good, and the needs of individual landowners, for example, the businesses or investors, which we refer to as the private good. Sometimes these aims align, often they do not. Planners must find common ground, promote compromise, and encourage solutions that maximize benefits and minimize conflicts. Easier said than done, right? So that's how complex our work is. And then arbitrating between competing social, economic, political, and physical forces, and many more. So every planning context involves trade-offs, social equity, economic development, political realities, and physical or environmental limits pull can pull in different directions. They compete because the professional planner acts as an impartial arbiter, weighing, helping stakeholders arrive at fair and balanced solutions. So in short, professional planning is solving problems in a structured way. So we anticipate and manage change, making informed decisions that balance the needs of many. So it's both a technical and a mediating role, because we use evidence, we use processes, we negotiate to produce outcomes that serve both present and future generations. Another thing is planning allocates in such a manner as to obtain the maximum practicable efficiency and benefit for individuals and society as a whole, while respecting the needs of nature and the requirements of a sustainable future. Um, so we are concerned about it demands planners to, it demands close attention to the location, form, intensity, and effect of human activities, both on the built environment, such as cities, towns, infrastructure, and the unbuilt environment, for example, the natural landscapes, agricultural land, watersheds, open spaces, etc. So, location, okay, location, form, intensity, effects. These are important elements. All of these dimensions require anticipating change, not just responding to current issues, but preparing for future trends, what opportunities. So above all, professional planning is about managing change sustainably and ensuring that today's action do not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Um, in in our practice, these principles are reflected in requirements for land use planning or CLUPs, and then environmental compliance, which is such as our EIA, and updated policies under many statutes and laws. Like we have the climate change adaptation frameworks, the DRR, etc. So, but we are talking here about history and theory, and so we are making, so we need to start from, the generic or the general aspects of planning. So it says here, planning is deliberate, organized, and continuous process of identifying different elements and aspects of the environment, determining their present state, okay, and interaction, projecting them in concert throughout a period of time in the future, and formulating and programming a set of actions or interventions to attain desired results. Okay, sorry. Bakit napunta doon sa thank you? Alright. So, what do we, okay, here we are finished here. Sana ito? Ito na ba yan, ano? Okay. How about the results? So we are still, give us a moment. Okay. Sequence. Now, deliberate purposeful actions. I think we are already okay with this one. Solve problems systematically, and then, okay, pays particular attention to the location, form. Ito yung kanina, no? Intensity and effect of human activities. So we can start now with 1308, because I think bakit kaya ganito yung ano niya, no? Meron yung mga A, B, C, D. So just a moment. Balikan ko lang. Para nawala yung okay. Rational, ito na muna tayo. Because this one, this is already, okay. Nasa lows yun. And then, so, we are now on rational of town and country planning. So it would avoid unnecessary implementation expenditures in terms of money, effort, and time. I know that all of you already, you are very familiar with all these statements here about rational, about the definition of terms, but we just need to set the tone for a more complex topics with the remaining days away from your board exam. So, um, okay, effective planning helps us avoid unnecessary implementation expenditures. So, wasted money, effort, and time. So, when planning is neglected, communities often resort to a trial and error method, you know, trial and error method. Where projects are implemented without adequate study, coordination, or foresight. So, I'm sure I'm sure you can relate, especially at the LGU level. Your hands are full. You are multitasking, and then lots of concerns, diba? And so most of your intervention, not really most, so some interventions would they don't have a study to, it's not um supported by a study. So what happens when it's not supported with adequate study, or it's not uh, coordinated properly, especially if it's a national PPA, or if there's lack of foresight for that particular PPA. So infrastructure and facilities might be built in the wrong place or at the wrong scale, leading to underutilization or costly retrofits. Also, public funds are spent on projects that may later need to be revised, relocated, or even dismantled. So efforts and manpower are wasted because of duplicated or overlapping initiatives. So these are the results of when a PPA lacks proper planning, and then there may be delays and inefficiencies that may arise when activities are not properly sequenced, or when one project obstructs another. So by following a systematic planning process, these pitfalls are minimized. So we need to um, do careful analysis, coordination from the outset, to how every peso, every hour, every resource uh, are used efficiently and contribute to long-term goals. So letter B, it would enable the area to have a rational and sound basis for reclassifying land uses that are consistent with legal, environmental, sociological, political, and economic consideration that ensures its smooth passage and approval by one concerned national and local agencies. So what do we mean by this one? We a process that's both technical and highly sensitive. For example, that planning should really be rational, involves rational, and planning is indeed a sound basis for reclassifying land uses. Land use reclassification involves changing the designated use of a parcel of land, such as from agricultural to residential, or from residential to commercial. So these decisions have far-reaching effects on a community's growth, environment, and economy. So, what systematic planning should can do for the locality? Um, it ensures that, of course, it ensures land use planning or land use changes. That we avoid uh, an uh, in arbitrary, or we because land use changes are not proper planning ensures that land use changes are not arbitrary, They are poured on data and analysis, taking into account national laws. We have the local government code and other national laws, for example, in governing agricultural lands. And then, so how could we make it environmentally sustainable? How about how should we take care of the social needs, political realities, and how do we tackle all these concerns? And how about economic viability? So it needs to be consistent with legal, environmental, sociological, political, and economic considerations. So that's what systematic planning can accomplish. So um, it's a multidisciplinary approach, and it prevents the kind of piecemeal, speculative, or self-serving reclassifications that can undermine community goals or harm the environment. Also, systematic planning accomplishes smooth passage and approval by concerned agencies when reclassification proposals are well documented and justified through planning studies. And so that's why I think that was last week when I asked you, so how can you say that a study is appropriate one, especially in the context of land use classification? So what are those tools that should be used by the proponent, and how should the legislators would be able to check or would be able to confirm if the proponent was able to defend or was able to justify land use classification? Or because you are proposing not only land use classification, but you are also proposing to rezone. So there's a lot of tasks on the part of the LGU when we receive proposals to reclassify land uses. So um and all this, and that's why we are all talking here about the rationale of planning, town and country planning in particular. And so that's why we're taking the exam, and for you to be, to be more credible and to be more competent in tackling your respective concerns on, especially on land use planning. So in letter C, it says it would serve as basis for enacting a zoning ordinance to ensure a more balanced, okay, a more balanced and orderly spatial development. So a systematic planning process, again, we're talking about systematic planning process serves as its foundation or for enacting zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance is the primary legal tool used by local governments to regulate land use and guide development in a balanced and orderly manner. So it's indeed crucial because through zoning, the local government divides its territory into specific zones: residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, institutional, and so on. Each zone has its own set of rules and standards about what activities and structures are allowed or prohibited. So this spatial regulation helps prevent incompatible uses from being placed side by side. For example, separating heavy industry from residential neighborhoods. Um, so how should we manage urban growth, and how should we protect sensitive areas? So a lot of concerns, and it's zoning that should ensure the balance and orderly spatial development. And then the zoning ordinance must be based on a well-prepared plan. Without the technical studies, without the public consultations, policy directions established in the CLUP, a zoning ordinance risks being arbitrary. A zoning ordinance also risks being inconsistent or even legally questionable. The plan provides the evidence and rationale for the boundaries and permitted uses set out in the ordinance. Also, we need to align it with national guidelines. Such it should always be consistent with the higher hierarchy plans and strategies, and so it should be aligned with national guidelines and current standards. So the SUD is there to provide guidance, and they have and when it was still HLURB and they already, uh, the HLURB already set or already prepared all those guidelines. And so that's the one that we're reading in preparation for your board exam. Uh, and those guidelines require that all zoning ordinances be aligned with the approved CLUP and subject to review for consistency with national and regional development frameworks. So, letter D, it allows the introduction of new terrains in planning and management of territories that are dynamic and responsive to the need of the place. Also, it ensures that development would take a sustainable path, which means the future generation of the municipal population can benefit, or municipal city population can benefit from the town's resource base. So, planning creates a framework that allows the introduction of new trends in how territories are managed. This is especially important as communities face rapid changes. So, what are these changes? Whether due to technology, economic shifts, climate risk, or changing demographics. So, our role as planners, we need to integrate emerging practices such as smart city, strategy, or the technologies surrounding smart city, and then green infrastructure, resilience measures, and people-centered urban design, etc. So that's our role. Also, we need to conduct structured planning process that should enable local governments adapt and respond to the unique needs of your area. And this flexibility ensures that solutions remain relevant and effective rather than being stuck with outdated or generic approaches. So letter E here says that a key goal of planning is to ensure that development follows a sustainable path. And this is a generic, statement. But number one, current development should not compromise the resource base of the town, such as land, water, forests, heritage sites, and ecosystems so that future generations can also benefit. Also, sustainable planning requires balancing growth and investment with resource conservation, disaster risk reduction, and equitable access to opportunities and services, and many more. A lot really about letter E. And in Philippine practice, it should align with national laws such as the EIS system, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, and then what's the new law on the Producers Act. So we also have Climate Change Act, the DRR, and some ongoing efforts to mainstream SDGs into our local development plan. If you have not done that yet, and it's about to end in 2030, and we're still talking about mainstreaming, and that should have been done during the first few years of the SDGs, and yet we still talk about that. How could that be, right? So planners, so there's uniqueness indeed in the quality of planning in different localities. So if you have developed yourself to be as competent as any those seasoned planners, then it would be good for the local governments, right? They benefit from your competence. They benefit from your uh what are the characteristics of a planner for you being both a generalist and a specialist, etc. And so dapat hindi nila kayo pakakawalan, di ba? Because you are making, um, you know, making it worthwhile for LGUs to listen or to uh, yeah to value your expertise. So you really need to, because I know most of you here are already expert in your own right, but you need to pass the board exam, right? So that's the that's non-negotiable because it's already a qualification, especially at the local government level. So letter F, the plan will facilitate the sourcing of funds for the implementation of recommended programs and projects. So, funders, okay, of funds. So when your plan is good, okay, for example, it's good. I will not say worse, but not good. So if you have that standard, do you think it will facilitate sourcing of funds? Baka, some funders are really choosy and some funders are looking for something else, right? So this one, if your plan falls into this category, and it will not facilitate sourcing of funds. So funders, whether they're national agencies, international donors, private investors, or even the local development, even local funders, they want to see that proposed projects are grounded in data, they are clearly prioritized, and part of a comprehensive strategy. So I think that you will not have any trouble about that. And so a plan provides this foundation demonstrating that proposals are not just wish lists, but are based on a thorough analysis and genuine community needs. Um, so it is an eligibility for grants and loans. This one, plan. Sources such as BBM, NEDA, or international organizations, the World Bank, ADB, NDP, and they require an approved CLUP, right? So CDP or similar document as part of their application process. The same applies to PPPs, where investors will only commit if there's clear strategic plan that aligns with regulatory requirements. So, so that's how important the plan is. Also, when projects are already identified and justified, local governments can more efficiently integrate them into their annual investment plans and secure budget allocations. This leads to more predictable, accountable, and effective public spending. So, in short, planning opens doors to funding by giving stakeholders and decision makers the confidence that investments will lead to meaningful, sustainable, and well coordinated outcomes. So, again, we're back. Just imagine, we're back to defining planning, but this time we have thinkers attached to the definition. So planning, we need to make some recalls regarding who said what. So planning, it's the making of an, kasi many times dire-diretsong year, this question was asked in the board exam. So who said what? Planning is the making of an orderly sequence of action. Making of an orderly sequence of action that will lead to the achievement of a stated. So simple lang, ano? We can even make a better definition, but you wait until you become Peter Hall, who is who said or who defined planning as the making of an orderly sequence of action that will lead to the achievement of a stated goals goal or goals. So according to Peter Hall, it's not random or haphazard because it requires a logical flow and one step leads to the next, and every action is based on careful analysis and prior decisions. So this sequence helps ensure efficiency, prevents backtracking, and allows progress to be measured and managed. So the whole purpose of planning, therefore, based on this definition, is to achieve something specific, whether that's because it's here, it says here, baka the they will be using the what which level analysis or applying or evaluating level of the Bloom's taxonomy. Baka lang ano, and baka hindi is straightforward yung question, but it will ask you who thought about that definition, who defined that. So it's a stated goals or goals mean it's what it's straightforward, it's not random or haphazard. So it is what else? So I'm thinking about uh how else they would phrase the question that would still let you remember that was Peter Hall, or that was the thinking or the definition of why he said it leads to the achievement of a stated goal or goals, so that it should be referring to the whole purpose of planning is to achieve something specific. Okay, something specific, because stated goals or goals. So whether that's sustainable development or improved quality of life or economic growth, environmental protection or disaster resilience, the goals must be clear from the outset so that every step in the planning process can be aligned toward their fulfillment. So it's the goals still fulfilling those desired or those stated goals, those expressed or specific goal or goals. So that's Peter Hall. Now, so again, what is this again? Deliberate, organized, different elements. Okay, different zones. Now we have Keeble. Keeble. He defined town planning as the art and science, of ordering the use of land and siting of buildings and communication routes. So buildings and communication routes, so as to secure maximum practicable degree of autonomy, convenience, and beauty. All right, so parang ano na lang, so ABC siguro, no? ABC para matandaan natin, because it's a remembering game, ano? Which is the first level in the Bloom's taxonomy. So autonomy, autonomy, then beauty, so beauty, convenience. So you can remember, no? Convenience. So these are some keywords to remember, Keeble. The ABCs of town planning. So art and science, you need to remember it was Keeble who defined that. That it should be the art, both art and science, because town planning blends creative judgment. So the art with rigorous analysis and systematic methods, because it consists of systematic methods. So this is the science aspect. And then the goal is to produce solutions that are not just functional, but also aesthetically pleasing and suited to the local context. So the use of land. siting of buildings and communication routes are the main physical elements planners deal with in this definition. And it said also that effective planning determines what kinds of activities happen where, how buildings are positioned to optimize space, sunlight, and ventilation, how people and goods move efficiently and safely. So that's why I mentioned the combination of use of land, siting of buildings, and communication routes. And so to secure autonomy, convenience, and beauty is, it's the ultimate goal to create places where communities can thrive independently. So that's the autonomy aspect. And then where daily life is easy and efficient, that's convenience, right? And so where environment, so we need to be very literal in understanding a definition so that no matter how they rephrase the question, it will still lead you to the correct answer. But sometimes, or okay, most of the time, it's verbatim. Okay, they cite the complete definition. You just have to determine A, keyboard, B, ganon. B, Peter Hall. So things like that. So another definition here is that by Thomas Sharp and so they are a duo. It's a duo that thought about this definition. Okay, keywords and attempt to formulate the principles that should guide us in creating a civilized, so there's the keyword there, civilized physical background for human life, whose main impetus is foreseeing and guiding change. So that's Thomas Sharp and Brian McLaughlin. So because foreseeing and guiding change is something that it's that they deem planning as fundamentally proactive rather than merely reacting to problems as they arise. So planners should expect to, anticipate everything such as trends, risks and opportunities, and also to guide how how change unfolds. And this might involve directing urban growth, managing the impacts of migration, preparing for disasters, or promoting innovation in learnings and infrastructure. So yung principles and civilized physical background. So the work of planners is anchored in asset efficiency, sustainability, resilience, and quality of life. And so these principles should shape decisions about the arrangement of spaces, the allocation of resources, and the design of systems that support daily life. And so the civilized physical background refers to the physical environment. Roads, buildings, parks, utilities, public spaces that supports the social, economic, and cultural life of community. Because you might be wondering about this one, civilized physical background, or it already I think you may wonder what that means, but it's for human life whose main impetus is foreseeing and guiding change. So another one is John Ratcliffe, concerned with providing the right side. I think it's easy, especially so that most of the questions naman are verbatim. So concerned with providing the right side at the right time in the right place for the right people. And so you can say, you can answer John Ratcliffe, but we need to understand what was he thinking before. I wish alam natin, but in his books anyway, you would, you, those principles were explained, like selecting a location that's suitable for the intended use, like considering factors like accessibility, safety, infrastructure, etc. Right time is because Ratcliffe considered timing as crucial. So facilities and developments must be provided when they are needed and anticipating growth or responding to emerging demands, but also ensuring resources are not wasted on premature or delayed investments. Right place there, beyond or it refers to the strategic positioning within the broader, or when you are um, selecting some sites for activities or development urban or regional context. So it ensures that projects complement rather than conflict with other activities, and that development supports the overall spatial strategy of the area. Now, it should be when it said right people, and that must be short of saying that planning should be self or people centered, that beneficiaries of any development or intervention must be clearly identified, whether it's a residential community or workers in industrial zone, commuters, or future generations. So in practice, Ratcliffe's definition reminds us or us as planners to be precise, timely, and responsive to base our decisions on evidence and stakeholder needs rather than on political or purely economic motivations. And so a lot more. But we need to, when you have time, you can read the books of John Ratcliffe, or read about his work also. Then what is this? Yeah, placemaking. It's also important to understand the concept of placemaking. Uh, the central principle here is governance and equity anchor the entire framework. So good governance, okay, here good governance. Passport, okay. Good governance ensures that decisions are transparent, participatory, and accountable. So equity ensures that all people. So we know already, but we need to understand the different elements also. So what's placemaking? At the end of the day, um, it's stated there in the, and the key concept there is urban and regional planning is placemaking. And we need to understand what are the qualities, because there are many elements there, and we need to do that one by one to understand really. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That when we look at, or when we need to understand urban and regional planning. It is trying to tell us that it's holistic, it's multidisciplinary process that shapes places where people can live, work, move, and flourish. So the role of the planner is to weave these dimensions together, making place a living system that's resilient, equitable, and uniquely responsive to its community. So this holistic placemaking approach is reflected in Philippine planning practice, particularly in the integration of social, economic, environmental, and governance goals in our CLUPs, in our CDPs, and other sectoral plans. So this model would tell us that, so our key takeaway here is that not just mandatory or not just a set of regulation and tackling or uh, here, I think, yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure of the specific questions before. So each time a set of key concepts appear here in the slide deck, it means that it came out or it was asked in the different, different in recent board exams. So for example, here, uh, you can see these are the strategies in achieving goals of planning, although they're generic. But then again, they were asked, okay. So like for effectiveness, especially when you are running out of time, what's the meaning of efficiency? Efficiency is making the best use of resources like land, time, funds, energy, so that we don't minimize, or so that we minimize waste and maximize output. So things like that, and you don't interchange that with effectiveness. That which strategies are, like for example, in efficiency. So these are some of those generic strategies that are appropriate when we need to achieve efficiency. So effectiveness is enforcement of policies such that effectiveness is about achieving intended outcomes. So having having a good plan is about also rules, when rules and standards are being followed, and that's why it pays attention, or it yeah, it was written there that effectiveness should leverage on enforcement of policies. Ecology, why ecology, and then equilibrium and balance. So we need to also remember all those things there. What those strategies should encompass. That when we talk about the strategy or ecology, is the goal is to safeguard environment, simple, and maintain harmony between human activity and natural systems. So it involves balancing development with conservation. A lot of things, or a lot of actions that should be balanced, and so it pertains to the generic strategy of equilibrium and balance, because you need to involve development when you develop something, and you need to also consider the conservation principles, and then how to integrate green spaces and how you support biodiversity, and then adapting measures for climate adaptation and DRR. So that's ecology. And equity, so even-handedness. Um, you ensure fair access to opportunities, services, amenities for all, regardless of status or background. So strategies include, policy making, distributive justice, in spatial planning. So we, so how do you, okay, you're a planner, and then how do you implement um distributive justice and spatial planning? So you start thinking, so what comes to your mind first when you're thinking about distributive justice in this context? So like informal settlement should be one of those, and then how to improve informal settlements, and like the SDG, no one should be left behind principle, and things like that, right? So that's in this goal, because ito nagawa ito before before the MDG or MDG during that time, pero hindi pa wala pang MDG during that time. And environmental planning board exams already are, there are already questions there, even without the MDGs and SDGs during the time already. But there are already generic principles, strategies that have been going on for in the conduct or in the practice of environmental planning. So, and another one is we ensuring that no individual or group is systematically disadvantaged. So that's even-handedness. Empowerment of people is also educate. It says here education and engagement of many sectors. So empowerment, when you consult people, when you meet them, so that's public consultation, right? But going beyond consulting people, you need to equip them, you need to train them, you need to make them genuine participants in the things that we do, like planning, implementing, or in our evaluation work. And so that's empowerment. Okay, don't empower by just merely talking to them and feed them some information, but it should lead to, a greater, a bigger or a more relevant intervention. And so you can say that you have empowered them. I hope you will not forget the different. It may sound very easy, or it may look very easy in your eyes, but you can be confused. So you need to pay attention to the paragraphs that you will be seeing in your board exams, during your board exams. Okay? Pwede ninyong pagpapalit-palitan niya. Ano to? Especially so that you're doing it digitally. So it should be a lot, anong tawag mo daw? It should be more confusing. Unlike when you have the hard copy, the test questions in your hands, so you can put some markings, and you can think better, right? Rather than when you are, I'm not sure how your strategy should evolve from that particular preparation, that you thought that it will be pen and paper, and then suddenly it became digital. So yung mga maliliit na bagay like efficiency, effectiveness, I hope you will stay calm, you will stay really be very critical thinker. So thinking, okay, shifts in modern planning. This is also important. Although this one is quite, we may say it may be outdated in your thoughts, in your perception, and this one also, and because there were already emerging shifts after, okay? But still, we need to consider it, like how, because historically, it used to be product-oriented, and then it became process-oriented. So what do we mean by that? That before, the focus was mainly, for example, on producing physical outputs like plans, maps, documents as end products. But after here, the emphasis is now on the planning process itself, how decisions are made, how stakeholders are engaged, and how plans are updated, adapted over time. So the process is ongoing, iterative, and responsive to change. But beyond process-oriented, so there must be like outcome or results-based, mga ganun, results-based. So, but then again, you need to understand all this one, and I trust that you will still be very smart. You will remain a smart examining during that time. Okay. So all inclusive, what do we mean by that? That before plans try to cover everything, all inclusive nga, di ba? And then often leading to thick, like to these documents that are just gathering dust na because sobrang kapal na niya, and then but the priorities are not really intact there because you need to do all this, like mm, you are considering all data that you bump into ganon, and then the all-inclusive became strategic. But what's beyond more strategic, di ba? Ang dami na. But this is generic shifts that we are trying to talk about tonight. Because after here is on the being more strategic, modern planning as more strategic, setting clear priorities, allocating resources efficiently, and targeting interventions where they will have the greatest impact. And then compartmental, and due to administrative boundaries, um, to becoming integrated or transborder, the transborder concept. Before planning, okay, compartmental. So it's, for example, uh, citywide or city level, at the municipal level or barangay level. These are boundaries, right? Like jurisdictional, called the territorial. So, and then it may lead to disjointed solutions, like flood control in one area causing problems in another. So where it needs to be like administrative boundaries may be very dangerous when we are just planning, but we're doing that. We have the CLUP, so those are administrative boundaries, right, that we are planning for. But there are some solutions, or there are some strategies that should be integrated. Integrated, like watersheds, transport, and pollution, they cross boundaries. That's why it's and even regions. So this is an approach now required under our Philippine planning policies for metropolitan and regional development, especially if um, there are some provinces that are doing metropolitan or metropolitanizing their cities or their regions. So this one is what that's the meaning actually of integrated or transborder approach, or okay, shift or strategy. Now, agency led to community based. National agencies or LGU planning offices is the one handling the planning process, uh, often with limited public input or engagement. So that's the this one. So it's indeed being, so most approaches, most interventions, they're not really informed by public. So when it's community based or here, iba pala yun. So, mamaya na lang yun. So, yung community base is that you involve the community and then you draw on local knowledge. Okay, so there are some terminologies there that when it's community based, that you draw on local knowledge. And okay, local knowledge. Okay. Building ownership also, building ownership of ownership from the community. Okay. And then what else? Yeah, community engagement. So, and a lot more actually of those actions or strategies, community engagement. And then top down to bottom up. Okay. It's similar to this agency-led community base, but what's the difference? Participation was sometimes too broad, right? Too broad or unfocused, making it difficult to reach consensus or move forward. And so, or I mean, I think I'm talking about open participation, but I think I'm here. So top down, bottom up. I think this is what I mentioned earlier about DILG approach on bottom up. The decisions were made at the top and imposed on local, right? So there's no communication or there's little engagement there at the bottom, at the grassroots level. So bottom up planning gives a voice to those most affected, like residents, civil society. So it's quite similar here, and local leaders. So allowing for more grounded, relevant, and sustainable outcomes. Um, Here, but open participation here, uh, uh, yun, I think that's the one that I was referring to as too broad or unfocused, making it difficult to reach consensus or move forward. While this one, focused participation, so focus and then open participation means that yeah, you engage the right stakeholders at the right time using structured tools and methodologies. Like I know you're familiar, you've been doing FGDs, the focus group discussions, okay, and then through these tools, right? And then also stakeholder mapping also is one tool. Stakeholder mapping. Then targeted consultation or targeted consultations. Okay. To ensure effective, meaningful involvement. So that's how shifts in modern planning should look like, and I hope you become familiar with that already. So we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but there should be a lot more, especially this time that there have been emerging shifts. But you know already what is this. So science and art, meaning that being analytical is when you consider planning as analytical, then it's the science aspect, and when it's creative, that's the art aspect. So it draws on data, models, and objective assessment. It also requires vision, imagination, and judgment to produce solutions that are both practical and inspiring. So multidisciplinary means that no single field has all the answers, and so yeah, effective planning brings together. Uh, have you seen the HLURB guideline on being multidisciplinary? That when the more the merrier. Have you seen this one? The more the merrier. Di ba? Doon sa stakeholders, the more the merrier kind of thing. You know, it's a principle. Okay. And so it means that it's super, I forgot the term. Uh, but it should be all inclusive or but I will remember later. Ano na yan? Can you remember this one? Saan nagpo-fall na column ito doon sa HLU big guidelines natin? The more the merrier means that more participation from other sectors, right? We complete the, the different participants from not only academic or government, national government. Then we also have the civil society organizations and many other stakeholders that makes it the more the merrier.
Executive committee ata yan, ma'am. Yung
Committee.
technical working group.
Yeah, the TWG, yung composition, ano?
Yes. Yes po. Yung pangatlo, yung the more the merrier.
Ayun, ito yung pinaka, this is the most, this is the recommended one, di ba? Okay, so you try to, that's why each time I write something here or I utter it, and then when you can relate, it means that you have read sufficient part of those guidelines. So thank you for that, Jamel. Okay. Comprehensive is looking at the big picture. You know, when you consider all relevant aspects like physical, social, economic, environmental. So we cannot avoid that anyway. That's why it's called CLUP. And it avoids what you call tunnel vision and seeks to address the root causes rather than symptoms. Right? When you are making it comprehensive, when your plan or the planning process is comprehensive, and being dynamic as a process is when it you attribute it to any change, like for example when conditions change like when populations grow or otherwise, or when economies shift from primary to secondary to tertiary and to other beyond being tertiary. Ang dami kasi yun eh. So, when hazards emerge, and then when technologies evolve. So, planning is responsive to these changes. And so, the planning process could be more responsive, and you can update approaches and recommendations as new information and circumstances arise. We should always tell people that even if it's a 10-year plan, for example, and then you don't update that after the 10th year, and you need to do that as often as practicable or as necessary. Okay, so that makes it a dynamic process. Then continuous and iterative means that planning doesn't end with the completion of a document. It is an ongoing process of review, and so this one quite similar. And then adjustment takes place and improvement takes place, and then iterative cycles of monitoring, evaluation, and feedback ensures plans remain relevant and effective. Then participatory is when especially the people who are affected by your plans, and that they must have a say in shaping them. So participatory approaches or promotes ownership, accountability, and produce better results. So that's what makes it a participatory planning process. Then cyclic or spiral means eating cycle. Follows a cycle, and then diagnosis, goal setting, action, monitoring, and feedback. But it's not supposed to be static. With each cycle, learning is accumulated and the process becomes more refined, hence spiral. Now, time-bound, all plans must have a clear time frame, short term, medium term, or long term. So deadlines and milestones keep implementation on track, enable progress to be measured, and trigger updates when necessary. So ito, okay na tayo dito. So I can just look at it. They might ask you about the scope or coverage of planning. Baka kasi they will also ask, so when do you consider narrow, narrow planning? So narrow is when it focuses on specific perspectives and concepts, frameworks. Then moderate. So what are the examples of this scope or coverage of planning that when you say narrow? So mga vision statements. So although it's part of a bigger plan or a long-term plan, but vision statement. Although it still pertains to long-term kasi, di ba? So it's a motherhood statement. So long-term plan. So, but it becomes narrow when it's you refer to it as a framework, framework level that outline broad directions without going into operational detail. So it's something that don't take it as the vision in itself, but as a vision statement. You can really make it a dynamic that it should change or it should be updated as the need arises. So moderate is still a framework structure. So this is a bit similar that moderate when you are considering developmental or framework based or connecting concepts to implementation, not as detailed. So it lacks this one, lacks detail, this one lacks detail also. When you integrate all the different sectors, then it becomes broad. But an example here. So okay, here in the narrow, so we can say this is project concepts. Okay, so to make it clearer, these are project concepts as an example, and then moderate ito siya, framework structure development. So pero yung example niya is we can say sectoral frameworks or any framework, the structure as an example. Baka kasi itanong sa inyo ano yung example. And then A, narrow, B, moderate, C, broad, D, none of the above. And so that's why I said, okay, I can make some examples here. Oops, nawala na. Project, so conceptual level yung narrow, then moderate is a framework level, and then yung broad naman is integrated, comprehensive, detailed. So those are the characteristics of a broad planning. When it's integrated, when it's comprehensive, or when it's detailed. So CLUP, these are the long-term plans, CDPs, and then master plans, and those are broad. Those are the coverage of scope or coverage of planning. For the duration, these are generic, okay? That when we say 1 to 3 years, So usually covers immediate or immediate actionable priorities, then could be short term. Now the AIP is an annual plan, and so it is a short term plan, and then medium term could run. So ano na yung 4 doon, nawala si 4 ano. Basta yung normally the short term is based on the term of the local chief executive, ganon. So then medium term designed to align with also political sa, di ba yung sa 3 years din pala yung sa congressman, ano, pero yung Senate, but we will not align that with ano naman. So it could be ano ba yung mga ano ba yung mga medium term natin na development plan? Yung mga ano yung mga ano ninyo, medium term development plan ninyo that halimbawa 6 years. Ano na yung mga yon?
CDP po, ma'am.
Ano?
CDP po, Comprehensive Development Plan.
So 6 years yun, ano?
Yes
Okay.
po.
Okay. And then yung ELA is 3 years, no? 3 years. So ELA.
Hello ma'am, hello po. Paano yung medium-term development plan ng per administration po ba?
By?
Yung medium-term development plan usually of a sitting president, parang gano'n ma'am, meron ba? Di ba may gano'n ma'am?
Pwede rin, oo. Like sa national level, ano? Sa national level. Usually, like broad kasi, usually long term kasi yan. But the president anyway, the executive department, headed by the president, normally priority, may tawag doon eh. So, the Philippine Development Plan, parang ganon, ano? The medium term, nilalagay naman eh. Di ba meron tayong MTPDP, ganon, ano? MTP.
Yes ma'am.
Medium,
Yung medium-term Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028.
oo. So, mag-e-end siya ng, ano, no? Mag-e-end siya ng 2020, sakto sa, ano niya? Sakto sa end of term ni PBBM, ano? So, meron din tayong Philippine Development Plan. Basta madami yung ano, medium term public investment program, ganon. So, those are meant for a medium term at the national level. But in the ano in the local government, meron ba tayong tinatawag na medium term sa LGU, local level?
CDP lang ma'am.
O yun lang, ano? But it's meant to, ano kasi, yung sa CDP kasi, ano, sa
Be
CDP,
reviewed every 3 years ata yun, ma'am.
if we follow the hierarchy, ano, di ba? Pag si LUP. Anyway, we will run through those area, yung ibang, ano, yung 45%, okay? This is just the generic. Please remember, don't overthink again para maano natin. Ano? These are according to the, the broad aspects of planning. We are still there. Wala pa tayo dun sa specific. Okay ba tayo? Okay. Basta ito, long term, it may be asked kasi yung sa term niya. Not necessarily thinking of the specific plan, ganyan. But these are generically, ano yung measurement, ano yung time frame. Although nakalagay kasi dyan, but we think about beyond 10 years are long term yan, okay? Especially for a master plan. All right, so yung levels of planning, anyway, I'll leave this up to you kasi we will do it naman in our area 1, area 2 ba yan? So, doon sa process natin, we will do all this anyway. And, by the way, lumalabas, laging lumalabas ito yung what's the difference of these three, ano? What is a sector? So, ano ba yan? Yung definition of term, normally yan lang naman yung tinatanong. And so, sector, what's the difference between sector, program, and project? So, it says here as an element, okay? An element. Kasi, even if you know this, pagdating sa board exam, parang ano, you will forget about it. Because they will put options that are confusing and magkakadikit siya, yung halos hindi nyo na makita yung difference, ganon. So there are some consultants specializing in writing examinations. So they try to, the goal is to, for you to think critically. All right. So an element or subsystem of a whole having coherent functions and subject to common thematic type of planning. Yan pa lang, ano, parang mahirap na, no? So it is an element or subsystem of a larger whole. Yun na lang. Like, ano, the community, city, or organized around coherent functions and a common theme. So, halimbawa, health sector, economic sector, social sector, mga ganun. So, it forms part of a whole. Yun yung isipin natin na concept. So, in planning, each sector is addressed individually, but always in the context of its relationship to the whole system. Nakuha niya yan? So, that's why it said there, sectors provide the thematic foundation for organizing data analysis, objectives, and interventions. Okay, so please, on thematic type of planning. So, please, part of a whole, parang ganun, an element or subsystem of a whole. Anyway, you're not doing essay, so you're just selecting an option or the correct answer. So please, at least bits of idea, kailangan alam lang natin. And then a program is a collection, all right, collection of complementary projects or activities formulated to achieve the functions, objectives of a sector. So programs describe in detail the kind and quantities of resources to be used. So, ano yung dapat nating keywords doon so we'll remember? Kasi, I'm sure ito, but there is, peculiar, there are peculiar definitions kasi in the planning context. So, program is a collection of complementary projects or activities designed to achieve the objective of a particular sector. So which one is bigger? Housing program, for example, may include projects for socialized housing, relocation, slum upgrading, and site development, di ba? Ganon. So programs are formulated at a strategic level and include detailed resource requirements, timelines, and desired outcomes. So they bridge the gap between sectoral objectives and specific on-the-ground interventions. So which one is bigger? Anyone?
The program po.
Program. Particular sector. Okay. So because it's a collection, ano kaya? Okay. So bigger ba ang ano? Sandali ha. Ano yung difference niya din, James?
Yung sa akin ma'am is yung how I see it is yung
Halimbawa health.
connection kasi.
Halimbawa health sector.
Yeah. Okay. So kung ganyan ma'am, mas malaki yung sector po.
Yes, because sabi ko kanina, it is a program. A program is a collection of complementary projects or activities is designed to achieve objectives of a particular sector, di ba? So yung sector mo, health, and madami kang programs under the health sector. So mas mataas yung sector, di ba? And madaming programs under one sector. Although it is a subsystem. Because after the sector, you are filling out, and there are many sectors under one under one city, for example, di ba? Correct? So city or region, madami siyang sectors under it. Parang NEDA or DepDev, madami silang sectors. But under each sectors, there are programs. Now, with project, it says here a self-contained unit of investment aimed at developing resources and facilities within a limited area within a given time period. So a project deals with goods and services significant to the accomplishment of national, regional, and local development plans. So project is the smallest, diba? It is a self-contained unit of investment focused on developing specific resources or facilities in a limited area within a defined time period. So there's a time frame. For example, construction of a barangay health center or rehabilitation of a specific road segment, installation of solar street lights in a neighborhood. So projects are tangible, measurable actions that contribute directly to the implementation of programs and ultimately to the accomplishment of sectoral and overall development goals. Okay na ba tayo? Okay ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then there's another, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. Okay. So, concept lang. We need to, we need to also differentiate this one. Alan, basa nga ito. Concept lang.
Ma'am, hindi ko mabasa ang liliit.
Ay, maliliit ba?
Cellphone kasi ma'am gamit ko ngayon.
Ay, okay. Si James.
Sige po. Concept plan is the output of the first stage activities in the preparation of a development plan. It consists of an overall growth pattern, strategy, sectoral policies and population, and employment target and forecasts.
Magulo din, But the concept plan, please remember that it is the initial output. Diba? Even in yung timeline kanina, yung mga short, medium, and then broad or medium or long, concept plan lagi yung initial, the initial output. So it means that in the development planning process, so it is the initial output, yung concept mo na. Although it provides a high-level blueprint that lays out the overall growth pattern, how and where, ibig sabihin how and where the area is expected to expand. That's the overall growth pattern. Then we have the development strategies. We have the sectoral policies. What are the sectoral policies? Like housing, transport, economy, environment, etc. And all the concept also provides a high-level blueprint also that lays out population and employment targets and forecasts. So there are projections to guide planning for services, infrastructure, and jobs. So the concept plan acts as a bridge between the initial situational analysis and the more detailed development plan. And it also sets the vision and strategic direction. So quite quite long and quite but if you look at the definition here, basta that's the initial output. When you distinguish or you make distinctions between the two, here, basahin mo nga ito, James.
Development plan po.
Mm-mm.
Development plan is a series of written statements accompanied by maps, illustrations, and diagrams which describe what the community wants to become and how it wants to develop. It is essentially composed of community goals, objectives, policies, programs, and a land use or physical development plan.
Sectoral plans. Okay, so development plan is a comprehensive document compared with here that it is the initial output. Okay, madali lang siya distinguish naman. And so it's a comprehensive document describing what a community aspires to be and how it intends to achieve that vision. Okay, so normally it includes written statements like vision, mission, goals and objectives, and then there are also maps there. There are illustrations, diagrams to show spatial strategies and intended outcomes, and also it contains community goals, objectives, policies, programs, and a land use or physical development plan, all derived from sectoral studies. So the development plan is both strategic and operational, guiding land use, infrastructure, investment, and governance over a specified period. So at least madali lang i-distinguish itong dalawa, no? And then consultation is the act of seeking technical advice or professional opinions from specialists, stakeholder, or the public. Madali na lang itong seeking technical advice, but you consult. And then importantly, advice given in consultations may or may not be adopted. So when you consult, you're not obliged to accept it or to adopt it by the decision makers. So in planning, consultation helps improve plan quality. So that this must be the goals of consultation. It also ensures transparency and builds stakeholder ownership. And so you need to kasi baka true or false, baka it importante yung it may or it may not be adopted by the decision maker. So that's the essence of consultation. Then values, principles, norms, because we need to go to urbanization and urban development. Are you pwede ba tayo pwede nating gawin ito like a brown bag event, 1 hour brown bag. Pwede bang pag mag-lunch kayo bukas?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay, brown bag review is magsimula tayo ng 12 to 1. So ang gagawin natin, kain kayo, kinig lang kayo, okay? To do this one. Alright? Okay, so I need to end here because meron pa pala akong habulin ng 11:59, okay? Nakalimutan ko yung aking may hahabulin ako na 11:59 I need to submit online,
Thanks,
okay?
ma'am.